So I think you guys will enjoy it a lot. But first, a little bit more about Elvina. Her main interest is the research and conservation of the biodiversity of tropical ecosystems with the aim of addressing biodiversity loss through practical measures for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and biological resources, provision of biodiversity information for decision-making, filling gaps in knowledge, and contributing to the understanding and appreciation of nature. She has expertise in biodiversity inventories, rehabilitation of degraded ecosystems, including burned forest lands, mangroves, and coastal forests, restoration and population recovery of endangered island bird populations, and rehabilitation of their habitats. The secondary interest is conservation education, with the aim of finding ways to communicate science to the people and engaging them in environmental issues to build ecological awareness and an appreciation of their local environment. I think she accomplishes both those goals through her work in this bright spot intervention. So without further ado, Dr. Henriette.
Good day, my name is Dr. Elvina Henriette from Terrestrial Restoration Action Society of Seychelles, safeguarding the Seychelles biodiversity through community-led rehabilitation programs. Our actions are focused mainly on Prale Island, where forest fire is the main factor threatening biodiversity and livelihood on the island. Over 40% of Prale has been affected by forest fires and are considered to be degraded. The problem is getting even more serious with changes in climate, which is being manifested through longer drought periods and less rain. There are several consequences of forest fires, mainly the loss of forest cover. And when this happens, the rains leads to an increased level of soil erosion. And the sun basically bakes the soil, causing it to be hard, compacted, and making it very difficult for the rain to infiltrate through the soil, which leads to less water in our rivers. And definitely these kind of consequences threaten the livelihoods of communities living downhill of those degraded lands. TRAS decided to set up a long-term rehabilitation program for us to educate and raise awareness of forest conservation and the importance of rehabilitation of those degraded lands, and for us to put in place several projects to rehabilitate our degraded ecosystems. One of the first activities we did was to set up a native plant nursery, and today TRAS has the largest native plant nursery in the Seychelles, capable of producing over 15,000 seedlings per year. We are the leader in native plant propagation in the Seychelles at the moment. Before we do any rehabilitation, it's very important for us to remove invasive plants from the sites. Long ago, they decided to use introduced plants in order to combat soil erosion on the degraded hills. Unfortunately, those introduced plants became invasive and prevented native plants from regenerating and flourishing on those sites. So before we can move in for us to replant native, we need to remove those introduced invasive plants first. So we do that by having a team that comes in to clear those plants and to make way for the native plants that we will be planting. On very steep slopes, we need to build anti-erosion barriers because there are severe soil erosion on these sites, and the soil ends up in wetlands and the lagoons, whereby they create other problems for the marine habitats, such as the coral reefs. So we decided to use a very simple, cheap, traditional method by using palm leaves for us to build the anti-erosion control methods. We also do trials in order for us to know which plant species will perform best on those degraded sites. We also do the trials for us to find ways to break and loosen the soil to make it softer for the plants. We add charcoal and organic matter to the soil to make it more fertile, and also lay palm leaves onto the ground to produce mulch to protect the soil from the sun, but also from intense rainfall that will cause soil erosion. After we've done all those preparatory activities, we move on onto the planting on those sites, and we normally do those by engaging with communities from Prale, Mahe, and also the other islands. And the volunteers are basically from various organizations like the schools, the hotels, the banks, government officials, etc. Rehabilitation is also done in mangroves and coastal forest, whereby we rehabilitate those ecosystems that are also important, and whereby we have also introduced species that were not found on Prale in order for us to enrich the biodiversity of those mangrove ecosystems. We also protect the plants by using wraps around them, which protects them from predation from the native animals, which otherwise will eat all of the seedlings that are planted. So by doing this, we have managed to increase the survivorship of the mangroves. So this is an initiative that is working very well, simply because we managed to put in place various components for its success. So there are a couple of critical ingredients, I would say, such as the use of performant native plant species, which we identified through various trials that we did. Soil enrichment is another important component for us to improve this infertile soil. We developed planting techniques that are very important as well for us to maintain. This is to give you an example of a mangrove ecosystem that was rehabilitated, so you can see the before and after. So there are various challenges that TRAS is facing in its quest to rehabilitate those degraded ecosystems. Of course, funding is a major one, and we need funding for us to be able to upscale those good initiatives to the other sites. We also need to continually engage volunteers because it's a way that we can also cut down on cost. And it's also a way for us to engage them into our activities to raise their awareness. Like I mentioned previously, invasive plants and the long-term maintenance of those sites are challenges that we need to deal with. It is very important also for decision makers, but also for funders to understand that biodiversity conservation and rehabilitation is not a short-term endeavor. It is comparable to a lifestyle that needs to be maintained and sustained permanently. And this is why TRAS focuses its actions within the same areas over long periods of time in order for us to achieve our long-term objectives. So with this in mind, I will thank you for your time and for your attention, and I wish you a good continuation. Thank you.